Playoff scenarios.
Thank you, London. And bear with me, everybody, on these playoff scenarios because things can get a little bit complicated. Let's start with the easy ones. First of all, Bayside Tigers. She has clinched her Shannon Culpepper division by way of a probable worst case scenario is a point break tiebreaker between her and Paul Giamatti's my father. They split the season series. If she loses and he wins and they're tied at 9-4, the points tiebreaker, which is the third tiebreaker, would take into effect. And provided he doesn't outscore her by around 200 points this week, which is unlikely, she will remain as a champion in clinching that division and secure a first-round bye. The Night Moves, similarly, in the Kim Powell division, have clinched a division berth and a first-round bye as well. The tiebreaker between the Night Moves and the Bayside Tigers for the number one seed, it's really inconsequential. We can get to that, but there's more parties that need to hear some more scenarios. So, Paul Giamatti is my father, as you could see by the terrible dance. He has clinched a playoff berth. His seeding will depend on whether he wins or loses this week, and some other teams as well, considering some tie-breaking scenarios. Now, also talking playoffs, there are essentially 4 teams fighting for 2 spots. And I neglected to mention the Cavina Hughes division. I'm sorry. The Philly Convicts have clinched a division berth based on their tiebreaker with Zip Zap Rap. So even if they lose, Zip Zap wins. Then that would be a scenario where although tied at 7-6, the Philly Convicts have swept that season series. So yes, the 3 teams that I talk about, or I should say 4 teams for 2 spots, are the Nightdale Wolfpack, the Wet Bandits, the Pride Snatchers, and Zip Zap Rap. Now, here's where scenarios can get a little bit tricky here. Okay, so when we think about tiebreakers, the Wet Bandits own a tiebreaker of head-to-head victory over Zip Zap Rap, and currently that is the only team in terms of head-to-head that the Wet Bandits have the tiebreaker over. His tiebreaker scenario with the Pride Snatchers is split season series, and the divisional record would be the next tiebreaker. Now, if considering the record right now in the division for both teams is 2-3, both the Wet Bandits and the Pride Snatchers, provided the Wet Bandits were to lose and the Pride Snatchers were to win, Pride Snatchers and Kool-Aid would win that tiebreaker over the Wet Bandits and move up in the scenario standings. Now, in terms of tiebreakers for Zip Zap Rap, provided he wins, he obviously would need both Nightdale Wolfpack and the Wet Bandits to lose to get down to 7-6 so he could tie one of them. He does, however, lose the tiebreaker with the Wet Bandits. He does have the tiebreaker with the Pride Snatchers, and that's why he is ranked ahead of him as far as the number 7 spot right now. And then in terms of his tiebreaker with the Nightdale Wolfpack, he actually loses that with a head-to-head battle. So, similarly speaking, Pride Snatchers themselves will actually lose the tiebreaker to Nightdale Wolfpack, but have a tiebreaker over Zip Zap Rap. So there's a lot of 3-way sort of business going on here in terms of tie-breaking. And really the dust has to settle in terms of figuring out who in the scenarios would be tied with each other. I know the video is going a little long here, but there's a lot to explain. Essentially, we'll use the tie-breaking scenario for head-to-head if applicable. If 3 teams are tied, if they all have common opponents, we'll have to use that. I have no choice if they don't, if people can't settle tiebreakers in that fashion, to go to the overall points, and I know that gives a leg up to Nightdale Wolfpack based on his point total. Essentially, it's pretty cut and dry for Kool-Aid. He needs a loss by the Wet Bandits and a win by himself in order to even start getting into the conversation. So he's on the outside looking in. Similarly, Zip Zap Rap is on the outside looking in again. He needs help in terms of a loss by the Wet Bandits and a loss by the Nightdale Wolfpack, and then he could start to talk about his own playoff scenarios, and we'll get there. So essentially, long story short here is it kind of relies on two teams, and if they lose, we'll have to revisit it, and that is the Wet Bandits at 7-5 and the Nightdale Wolfpack both at 7-5. Now some seedings can go one way or another if they both win, and then someone like Paul Giamatti, is my father, loses. Then we might talk about some shuffling seeds, but first is first, and that's clinching playoff berths. And those are the two pivotal games. So if you're looking at the scoreboard for this week, I know London already touched on it. The Pride Snatchers, tough break with Drew Brees throwing 5 interceptions. Trying to get that done against the Night Moves is going to be tough, but the projections still show you within 11 points. So we'll see what happens there. So when we're talking about the Wet Bandits, they're going up against the part-time hand models, and based on projections here, part-time hand models are actually favored to win that game. So it could be possible that the Wet Bandits could be knocked out of the playoffs. You don't know. I don't know. We don't know. It's too early to tell. And then Olds is a 65-point underdog against Zip Zap Rack. If you actually have a look, there's a lot of players that are questionable on his team, not just in injury set, but in actual skill set. And then finally, the Bayside Tigers taking on the Nightdale Wolfpack. Bayside Tigers is actually 15-point underdogs there, where Nightdale Wolfpack seems to be favored. So I know it's a lot to take in right now. I'm going to try to do my best to kind of update this throughout the day and see if things are shuffling to kind of give you a better sense of the playoff picture. But right now, it kind of relies on two games and two teams. One hoping to play spoiler, and that's the part-time hand models. So as even those 2 wins on the season, a third win would prove to be pretty important against those Wet Bandits. And then Aubrey's Bayside Tigers, who pretty much have nothing to play for either, locking up a spot already, going against Nightdale Wolfpack. So 2 scenarios where some teams need some help, and they need help from teams that don't necessarily have something to play for. So look for more in the coming hours here, and that's about it. Good luck, everyone.